From last week, and again, today's the 6th. So the next meeting will actually be on the 27th.
I think it's 28 or...
no, it's the 27th.
27,
Okay, and then the next month is also on the 6th and the 27th, because there's 4 weeks in February. Okay, so going back to on Attaining Buddhahood in This Lifetime, the lecture by President Keita. Again, there's another, this identical lecture is from SGI Malaysia in a little green book. We left off last week on page 10. We're going to go to chapter 2 now. And before I get going on that, though, I wanted to ask everybody if there was any significance in how you approached the Gohonzon this week. When you sat down in front of the Gohonzon, each time you sat in front of the Gohonzon, did you initiate something that is a carryover from what President Keita was talking about last week? Mm-hmm. What was he encouraging us to always realize in front of the Gohonzon? And I started to try and do it whenever, as the first thing I sit down, put this one out there, get that on top, put that as my focus to get started. To perceive the truth that my life itself is an entity of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Okay? I am an entity of the mystic law. Period. Okay? That's what President Keita and that's what this entire teaching is trying to express to you. Yeah. You must perceive the true nature of your life. That is already inherently there. Yeah. You are a You are an entity of the mystic law. So, anybody that didn't do that this week, I encourage you, and I'll keep asking the question, try to incorporate that into what you do when you sit down with the Gohonzon, because even if somehow you didn't chant for a day, or 2 days, or 3 days, or 5 days, it wouldn't change the reality that that your life is in fact an entity of the mystic law. You can never go wrong. You can never have been so bad that fact stopped or altered. Okay? And the fastest way to get back to the prime point is to realize the prime point. Right?
Yes.
Rather than having your daimoku awaken you to the point you finally go, oh yeah, that's right, I'm kind of Buddha or something, right? No. Start out. Try that. Okay? So the key points from last week in chapter 1 were chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo in terms of faith and practice. I hope everybody remembers that. You can go back to page 3 if you want to review that. Secondly, the heart is most important. Go back to page 5, review the significance of that. A humanistic, people-centered religion, page 7. The fundamental purpose of our lives, page 8. And changing the destiny of all humanity, on page 9. Now we continue on page 11, chapter 2. All right, the significance of chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Achieving a life of supreme victory through correct Buddhist practice. And again, what does this Gosho really emphasize? Besides Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. To perceive that Nam-myoho Renge Kyo correctly. Okay? Which is to understand it as not something outside yourself. All right? He says if you don't understand it correctly, you can chant your ass off. It ain't going to get you anywhere. You will not attain Buddhahood. Right. Right? So, achieving a life of supreme victory through correct Buddhist practice. Correct Buddhist practice is the only reason you get there. Frankly speaking. All right? Page 11. The practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo contains immeasurable benefit, for it enables us to summon forth in our own lives the limitless, that means there's no limit, power of the mystic law, the fundamental law of the universe. Nichiren Daishonin actualized, we have a tissue if there's one anywhere. Thank you. Nichiren Daishonin actualized happiness for all humankind through the boundless beneficial power of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. The doctrinal basis for this endeavor is set forth with great simplicity and conciseness in the opening passage of this Gosho on attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime. If you wish to free yourself from the sufferings of birth and death you have endured since time without beginning, and to attain without fail unsurpassed enlightenment in this lifetime, you must perceive the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings. This truth is Myoho Renge-kyo. Chanting Myoho Renge-kyo will therefore enable you to grasp the mystic truth innate in all life. It'll allow you to perceive this truth. All right? All right? Continuing on the second column, page 11. This passage encapsulates the profound principles of Buddhism and the religious revolution to bring about the enlightenment of all people that was begun by Shakyamuni and completed by Nichiren. Each word and phrase is infused with the sublime wisdom of Buddhism. To free oneself from the sufferings of birth and death endured since time without beginning, relates to the fundamental questions of human existence and the original purpose of religion. To attain unsurpassed enlightenment constitutes the profound Buddhist response to these questions. To perceive the mystic truth inherent in all living beings is this response further refined and deepened based on the philosophy of the Lotus Sutra. And chanting Myoho Renge-kyo refers to the practice established by Nichiren to enable all people to translate this Buddhist wisdom into action. The realization of this practice is the fruit of great compassion that aspires for the happiness of all people and indicates the truly revolutionary nature of Nichiren Buddhism. Now that was so packed I've got to reread it even if you understood every word. Page 11, second column, middle, it says, just quoting the Gosho, to free oneself from the sufferings of birth and death endured since time without beginning. What that relates to is the fundamental question of human existence and the original purpose of religion is to find the essence of your own life as an entity, as a living being, right? To attain unsurpassed enlightenment constitutes the profound Buddhist response to these questions. You have these questions that all people have, all religions, everybody alive has these questions. All right? This is the manner in which we're able to perceive the truth. And then it says, to perceive the mystic truth inherent in all living beings. After you've gotten the question, now you're able to get the answer. Is the response, is this response further refined and deepened based on the philosophy of the Lotus Sutra? And chanting Myoho Renge-kyo refers to the practice established by Nichiren to enable all people to translate this Buddhist wisdom into action so that we can do the practice. In other words, we discover what the law is, we discover what the name of the law is, and then we discover the correct practice to bring this forth in our own lives, right? Those are the 1, 2, 3 things that he was talking about before. Through this passage as a whole, it becomes clear that the practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, established by Nichiren, is the correct and supreme Buddhist practice. That's the whole point. We're establishing this to qualify that the Buddhism of sowing, which is completely different than anything found in the Buddhism of harvest, no matter what school it is, all right, is the correct teaching for the 5th 500-year period and beyond of the latter day of the law. Indeed, the short opening passage succinctly articulates the profound insights of Buddhism distilled over more than 2 millennia and the compassion, wisdom for leading all people to enlightenment found in Nichiren Buddhism. The purpose of this installment, chapter 3, is to confirm that, chapter 2, the purpose of this installment is to confirm that Nichiren's practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo represents the ultimate form of correct Buddhist practice, and that its establishment marks the start of a genuinely people-centered Buddhism that makes it possible for all humankind to achieve the same enlightened state as the Buddha. So what did that just qualify again? That you already know, but I just want to emphasize it. I got a big star there. Why? The Buddhahood that we attain is the same Buddhahood that Nichiren attained. Yeah. It's not a class B or a beginner's Buddhahood. Do you understand? It's not a Buddhahood that will become more profound in a future life. It's the same Buddhahood that Nichiren experienced and lived with in this lifetime. Page 12, attaining a state of eternal happiness. Going back to the Gosho. If you wish to free yourself from the sufferings of birth and death you have endured since time without beginning, and to attain without fail unsurpassed enlightenment in this lifetime, you must perceive the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings. This truth is Myoho Renge-kyo. Chanting Myoho Renge-kyo will therefore enable you to grasp the mystic truth innate in all life. Let us start. Bottom of page 12. Let us start, first column. Let us start by considering the profound meaning of the opening phrase, if you wish to free yourself from the sufferings of birth and death you have endured since time without beginning. So you've got to break it down again. Nichiren Daishonin's reference to the sufferings of birth and death endured since time without beginning is premised on the concept of transmigration. Everybody understands that because we're all Buddhists, but you do understand what he's saying there, right? Okay, we continue to exist, but not in the same form. All right? It is premised on the concept of transmigration, according to which living beings undergo an unceasing, suffering-filled cycle of birth and death that continues from the infinite past, that means without beginning, into the infinite future, means without end. All right? And that suffering comes from never being able to escape the nine worlds. Okay? Buddhism holds that this never-ending round of suffering ultimately arises from earthly desires, and that a negative cycle of earthly desires, karma, and suffering is part and parcel of transmigration. In other words, it's inseparable. You can't get out of the nine-world cycle that we're talking about without a means to do so. It's the natural state of things. Okay? In this sense, you with me? Mm-hmm. In this sense, the sufferings of birth and death endured since time without beginning also represents an indeterminable succession of illusion and suffering. You can go back as far as you can go, there will be lifetimes and you're stuck in the nine worlds. Because the thought of such endless transmigration is ultimately unbearable, forever and ever this is like this? I would rather not exist. Because the thought of such endless transmigration is ultimately unbearable, people naturally came to wish for a way to put an end to this painful cycle and free themselves from the chains of delusion and suffering. That's why everybody wants to go to heaven or go to nirvana or whatever, right? Mm. In Buddhism, there are two basic approaches to liberation from the suffering of this cycle. Hinayana and Mahayana, right? Actually, no Myoho Renge-kyo. In Buddhism, there are two basic approaches to the liberation from the suffering of this cycle. One view holds that people can free themselves from the endless karmic cycle of birth and death by eradicating earthly desires believed to cause it. The other is the Mahayana approach, in which the essence of life that undergoes transmigration is not viewed as a transient, impermanent phenomenon. Okay? Let me say that again. In Buddhism, there are two basic approaches to liberation from the suffering of this cycle. One view holds that people can free themselves from the endless karmic cycle of birth and death by eradicating earthly desires believed to cause it. Can you eradicate earthly desires? So that's going to take forever and then still never come. That's Hinayana. All right? The other is the Mahayana approach, in which the essence of life, your fundamental state, the cumulative karmic reality of the entity that you are when you gather as a temporary gathering of the five components, each time you transmigrate, which is always reflecting the collective karma that you have for that lifetime. Do you understand, right? Okay, so the other is the Mahayana approach, in which the essence of life that undergoes transmigration is not viewed as a transient, impermanent phenomena, not something that's just there temporarily and goes away forever, right? It's viewed as something that's constantly going on and being refined by action. By your action, that's what's refining it, not a god or some other entity that's defining your behavior and say, that was a good lifetime, right? It's you. The Mahayana teachings on page 13, first column. The Mahayana teachings, for example, espouse the cycle of the concept of undergoing the cycle of birth and death in accordance with the Bodhisattva vow to guide living beings to enlightenment. Or they view the oscillation between birth and death as a cycle of emerging from and returning to the fundamental, all-embracing life of the universe. The latter view can be easily understood using the metaphor of waves on the ocean. Birth is like a wave appearing on the surface of the ocean, the life of the universe, while death is the wave submerging back into that ocean. Gaining such an understanding of the essence of our own lives, which repeat the cycle of birth and death, is to attain unsurpassed enlightenment. Why?
Because
we no longer fear death, and we understand the basis of life itself. Okay, it says, which repeats the cycle of, this is to attain unsurpassed enlightenment, the highest awakening of the Buddha. Thank you. Going to the second column, top of page 13. The mystic truth embraces and is inherent in all living, in all things. The mystic truth embraces and is inherent in all things. In this passage, to perceive the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings means to attain unsurpassed enlightenment. The wisdom to apprehend this universally inherent truth represents the supreme enlightenment of the Buddha. Everybody understood that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. The point where Buddhism radically departs from many other philosophies and religions is that it uncovered within the individual's own life the law, or the limitless inner power for resolving all sufferings on the most fundamental level, changing the karma that creates them. A Buddha is one who, based on this law, has attained the ultimate wisdom to fundamentally put an end to suffering and construct indestructible happiness through utilization of having discovered that law, understanding that law, right? Buddhism is a teaching of unparalleled humanism that stresses the boundless potential within human beings. That's why it is called the internal way. To perceive the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings is to attain unsurpassed enlightenment. That makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. If you perceive that mystic truth, then you've attained Buddhahood, right? And if it's the mystic truth of your life, then it must be the mystic truth in all others. Mm-hmm. It is the sole means for freeing oneself from the sufferings of birth and death endured since time without beginning. That was referenced in the first place. This is Shakyamuni's starting point and the entirety of Buddhist thought. The scripture that proclaims this philosophy of the internal way is the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni's highest teaching and the one, toward the very end of his life taught, which teaches that all people can attain enlightenment. Because up until then, it was only special people that were, had already attained Bodhisattva, the stage of Bodhisattva. Okay? The scripture that proclaims this philosophy of the internal way is the Lotus Sutra, which teaches that all people can attain enlightenment. The Lotus Sutra could be said to embody the ultimate principle of respect for human dignity. In this writing, Nichiren Daishonin says that the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings is the principle of the mutually inclusive relationship of a single moment of life in all phenomena. Okay? This latter principle refers to the inscrutable relationship that exists between ourselves, our minds, and each life moment, and the universe. Its meaning is that all phenomena are contained in one's life and that one's life pervades all phenomena. This principle no doubt corresponds in meaning to the principle of inherence and pervasion articulated by Nichikan, the early 18th century restorer of Nichiren Buddhism, in describing the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Why would President Ikeda put that in there? Let me go back. In this writing, page 13, second column, last paragraph. In this writing, Nichiren Daishonin says that the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings in all living beings is the principle of the mutually inclusive relationship of a single moment of life in all phenomena. This latter principle refers to the inscrutable relationship that exists between ourselves, ourselves, and then he qualifies. What is ourselves? When I'm saying ourselves, what am I talking about? Our minds or life at each moment. That inner voice is the thing that actually is life itself, right? The rest, everything else is a support mechanism for whatever that name you want to call that inner voice, that mind, that whatever. Okay? Its meaning is that all phenomena are contained in one's life and that one's life pervades all phenomena. So there's no separation between you and anything. This principle no doubt corresponds in meaning to the principle of inherence and pervasion articulated by Nichikan, an early 18th century restorer of Nichiren Buddhism, in describing the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. And he sticks that point in there about Nichikan because Nichikan's the great restorer, okay? And we make a leap as it relates to the fundamental predication of outlook that we have that says that Nichikan knew his shit. And there was some stuff by the end of the Daishonen's life to that 26th high priest state that he was in, where things had become somewhat confused or needed clarity and definition again. Okay, so what President Keita is qualifying here is we're in no way rejecting all Nichiren Shoshu doctrine. Nichikan Shonin, who's a transcription of the Gohonzon we chant to, is a Nichiren Shoshu priest. We're not rejecting everything, right? We're qualifying it for the time that we're in. All right, so that's what Nichikan was doing when he did that back in the 17th century, 16 something, whatever. All right, so continuing on page 14. Everybody's with me? Page 14, the cosmic life enfolds and pervades everything. And because it does so, it is also inherent in all things, whether you perceive it or not, whether you're a Buddhist or not. The oneness of the cosmic life and our individual lives lies at the heart of the principle of the mutually inclusive relationship of a single moment of life in all phenomena. To awaken to this mystic truth is to attain Buddhahood to awaken to this mystic truth is to attain the Buddha's unsurpassed enlightenment. Everybody's with me? Okay, you understand what he was just saying, right? Okay. Naming the mystic truth. Page 14. The question is how to enable all people to perceive this mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings. Okay, we've bought into the fact that there must be some truth that is the basis of everything, right? Now we've perceived it, and we're going to name it. A widely accessible Buddhism will not be possible if only a very limited number of people can follow the way set forth for apprehending the mystic truth, which is absolutely the case. It's got to be available to the lowest denominator as it relates to intellectual ability to grasp. Before Nichiren Buddhism, and that's where this whole Buddhism of sowing takes over, because what was the only way that you could attain Buddhahood in your present form, according to Shintai, Makashikan. Okay, now could you be a casual person and master great concentration and insight? No, you'd have to be almost a sage. So that's what he's attacking here right now. Why is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo necessary? It's because the Buddhism that existed prior to the Buddhism of sowing was so complicated and so convoluted with so many different teachings ascribed to the same teacher, Shakyamuni, anybody could say anything and claim to be right. Okay? The thing about our Buddhism is that there's only one primary teacher. Okay? Okay, so naming the mystic truth. The question is how to enable all people to perceive this mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings. A widely accessible Buddhism will not be possible if only a very limited number of people can follow the way set forth for apprehending, for understanding, for perceiving and qualifying in their own life the mystic truth. Before Nichiren Daishonin, the great teacher Tentai of China tried to establish the means for perceiving this mystic truth through the practice of observing the mind, also known as the practice of concentration and insight. Okay? But you went through words and phrases and something, whatever the first two of the three before you got to great concentration and insight. But it was not only, but it was not a means readily accessible to people of the latter day of the law. They didn't have the capacity to become monks. All right? The initial step Nichiren took in opening the great path to universal enlightenment was to name the mystic truth. The universally inherent mystic truth originally had no name. But, as Nichiren explains in The Entity of the Mystic Law, a sage awakened to this truth in his own life. The universally inherent mystic truth originally had no name, but as Nichiren explains in The Entity of the Mystic Law, a sage awakened to this truth and in his own life could give it the most appropriate name. Pardon me. Let me try that sentence one more time. The universally inherent mystic truth originally had no name because it hadn't even been conceived of. It had never been perceived, all right? Eventually, there was an entity that he's talking about called this sage, all right? Okay, an entity perceived the truth. But then what to call it? He's saying, but as Nichiren explains in The Entity of the Mystic Law, a sage awakened to this truth in his own life could give it the most appropriate name. A sage that had done that could give it an appropriate name, all right?
Oh, okay.
Naming, that's what I was trying to make, that's what that sentence is kind of hidden. Naming something is a creative process, okay? So I could have named the law Joe or Frank or Harry Bledsoe. It does, that wouldn't have really had a significance. He says, giving a name that accurately grasps the essence of a thing has the important effect of making that essence available to all people because it allows them to perceive it. It enables all people to share in its value. On awakening Buddhahood in this lifetime, as indicated by the passage, the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings is Myoho Renge-kyo, Nichiren states that this mystic truth constitutes the fundamental law of the universe is none other than Myoho Renge-kyo. Strictly speaking, the term Myoho Renge-kyo existed prior to this as the title of the Lotus Sutra. But Nichiren was the first to identify Myoho Renge-kyo as being the name of the principle of the true aspect of all phenomena, which the Lotus Sutra teaches is the profound wisdom of all Buddhas. Also, although the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra expounds the life of the eternal Buddha from the standpoint of Shakyamuni, it was Nichiren who first revealed the essence of the Buddha's eternal life. The heart of the lifespan chapter is Myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, that was a very important paragraph. Let me go back. Okay, so he's saying, all right, the fundamental beginning, the fundamental inherent nature has been discovered, but what to perceive it, what to call it in order to share it. Okay? And now what he's qualified here is that a sage has the capacity to perceive that in a way that they could apply something that is descriptive, something that's easily discernible to people regardless of their capacity. So if you go to the Entity of the Mystic Law and you read the passage that he's just quoting from, the sage calls it Myoho Renge. Renge. He calls it Renge. He realizes that it's got the simultaneity of cause and effect. That's what he saw in the lotus flower. That's the whole thing that he's talking about here. This is the naming. Okay, so continuing on page 14. On attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime, as indicated by the passage, the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings is Myoho Renge-kyo. Nichiren states this mystic truth that constitutes the fundamental law of the universe is none other than Myoho Renge-kyo. Strictly speaking, the term Myoho Renge-kyo this is the most important thing, existed, strictly speaking, it existed prior to this utilization of Nichiren, okay, qualifying that this is what went down. Because again, that's the Japanese pronunciation of the Chinese title of the translation done by Kumarajiva of the Lotus Sutra. Okay? So that's what he's talking about. He says, strictly speaking, the term Myoho Renge-kyo existed prior to this as the title of the Lotus Sutra. He's talking about Kumarajiva's Myoho Renge-kyo at that point in time. But Nichiren was the first to identify Myoho Renge-kyo as that name. Because why? Because he's the namer. The namer has now made his advent. He can name what cannot be named until he makes his advent. Do you understand? He's the original teacher. But the bodhisattvas of the earth who understand what the hell he's doing and are his original disciples, they can't make their advent yet. Okay? Until the fifth 500-year period. That's when he clarifies all this stuff that's been very mystically just kind of referred to by Shakyamuni, qualified by Tentai. And now he's qualifying it for the latter day of the law. And there's not a feather ruffled. It all is as smooth as greased glass. It all flows together. There are no conflicts here. All right? Do you understand what I just said? All right, so, and also, pardon me. The true aspect of all phenomena which the Lotus Sutra teaches is the profound wisdom of all Buddhas. That Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is that. Myoho Renge-kyo. Nichiren is the first one to qualify. What you're talking about there is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That Myoho Renge-kyo is really Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand why I've kept making such a big deal out of, don't think of it as Myoho Renge-kyo like the Lotus Sutra, the 28th chapter title. Because it's a different Myoho Renge-kyo. It's the Myoho Renge-kyo that is you. The other one's a book. The other one's a teaching. Okay? This Myoho Renge-kyo is your life. All right? That's what President indicated that's why I started the thing out asking that question. All right? Also, although the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra expounds the life of the eternal Buddha from the standpoint of Shakyamuni, even though it says that on the surface, we now know from the depths, as the Daishonin has defined the truth where it lies. It doesn't lie on the surface where it's talking about Shakyamuni. It lies in the depths of the truth of the reality that the bodhisattvas of the earth have emerged. And Nam-myoho Renge-kyo has spread throughout the world. That crazy priest in Japan was right. Okay? That's the point. That's the point. Okay? It was Nichiren who first revealed the essence of the Buddha's eternal life. The heart of the lifespan chapter is Myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? I got through that. Page 14, second column. So, now we get into, so then if we're talking about, now we're qualifying, what is the eternal Buddha, right? What is that distinctly? All right? The eternal Buddha, since attaining enlightenment in the remote past, repeatedly undergoes a cycle of birth and death as a Buddha, while appearing in various forms within the 10 worlds for the salvation of all living beings. The lifespan chapter reveals that living beings of the 10 worlds, including Buddhas, and the phenomena of birth and death as well, are all manifestations of the great eternal life of the universe, because Nichiren says that the heart of the lifespan chapter is Myoho Renge-kyo. We can infer that Myoho Renge-kyo is the name of the great eternal life, universal life that is revealed in the lifespan chapter. All right? So, how does the eternal Buddha repeatedly undergo the cycle of birth and death while appearing in various forms within the 10 worlds? The aspect of inseparability with us. Do you understand? I'm not saying that there's not another Nichiren Daishonin running around under a different name. It's not necessary for it to be that way. We're all manifestations of the mystic truth that Nichiren brought forth. And that's his deal. Now it's our job. We're the bodhisattvas of the earth. Do you follow?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just read it again and I'll go on. The eternal Buddha, since attaining enlightenment in the remote past, repeatedly undergoes a cycle of birth and death as a Buddha while appearing in various forms within the 10 worlds for the salvation of all living beings. The lifespan chapter reveals that living beings of the 10 worlds, including Buddhas, and the phenomena of birth and death as well, are all manifestations of the great eternal life of the universe, of that phenomena. There's no separation between any of it. Because Nichiren says at the heart of the lifespan chapter is Myoho Renge-kyo, we can infer that Myoho Renge-kyo is the name of the great eternal universal life that is revealed in the lifespan chapter. Living beings in the 9 worlds, us, repeatedly undergo birth and death. Also follow the rhythm of birth and death, of emerging from and submerging back into the great eternal life that is Myoho Renge-kyo. Everybody's with me? Okay. Living beings in the 9 worlds repeatedly undergoing birth and death also follow the rhythm of birth and death, of emerging from and submerging back into the great eternal life that is Myoho Renge-kyo. They are embraced by Myoho Renge-kyo and at the same time possess Myoho Renge-kyo within them. This is why Myoho Renge-kyo is the name of the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings. It was Nichiren who first declared that Myoho Renge-kyo is to be chanted and spread in the latter day of the law. All right, page 15. Chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to perceive the mystic truth and establish the Buddhism of the people. Going back to the Gosho. The Lotus Sutra is the king of sutras, true and correct in both word and principle. Its words are the ultimate reality. And this reality is the mystic law, Myoho. It is called the mystic law because it reveals the principle of the mutually inclusive relationship of a single moment of life and all phenomena. That is why this sutra is the wisdom of the Buddhas. Life at each moment encompasses the body and mind and the self and environment of all sentient beings in the 10 worlds, as well as all insentient beings in the 3,000 realms, including plants, sky, earth, and even the minutest particles of dust. Life at each moment permeates the entire realm of phenomena and is revealed in phenomena, in all phenomena. To be awakened to this principle is itself the mutually inclusive relationship of life at each moment and all phenomena. First column, bottom of page 15, first column. Nichiren Daishonin's next step in opening this great path was to establish the practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. He appended the word Nam, a transliteration of the Sanskrit word Namas, meaning devotion, to the universal truth, Myoho Renge-kyo, and established the practice of invoking this truth. Chanting, invoking this truth. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Nam means to dedicate one's life. Chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo aloud represents a determination and vow to dedicate one's life to the realm of truth of Myoho Renge-kyo in thought, word, and deed. At the same time, chanting on page 16, chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo enables each person to actualize a way of life based on the universal truth of Myoho Renge-kyo. The crucial point in chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in Nichiren Buddhism is not simply intoning the name of an external truth. God, this is so key. He's again wanting you to understand what it is when you're chanting, what you're really doing. Again, the crucial point in chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in Nichiren Buddhism is not simply intoning the name of an external truth. Everybody understands that, right? Mm-hmm. It constitutes a practice to actually summon forth the inner truth that pervades the universe and our own selves and life and our lives in accord with that truth. This practice could be described as a process of establishing a self capable of activating and tapping from within the mystic truth originally inherent in all living beings. Trick paragraph. What did he just say there? That we've already discussed. We can say it again. At the same time, chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo enables each person, okay, to actualize a way of life based on the universal truth of Myoho Renge-kyo. All right? The crucial point in chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in Nichiren Buddhism is not simply intoning the name of an external truth. It constitutes a practice to actually summon forth the inner truth that pervades the universe and our own selves, and live our lives in accord with that truth. To be Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come once. This practice could be described as a process of establishing a self capable of activating and tapping from within the mystic truth originally inherent in all living beings, which is the minute you sit in front of the Gohonzon, you say from the very beginning, I am a thus come one of original enlightenment, eternally endowed with the three bodies, and you mean it. That's the way I start out, okay? Because now I'm not filled with delusion, okay? I'm only filled with obstacles, okay? With challenges, all right? Trust me, that really does work. If you remind yourself that you are the Buddha as the first thing that you do, because it's not in the 9 worlds, that you have to remind yourself, because you just chanted Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, that just brought forth the 10th world that allows you, oh yeah, okay? And chant as often as you can, because the more often you chant, if that's always the way you start chanting, the more often you're reinforcing that truth, all right? Looking back on the history of Buddhism, even though the Lotus Sutra has taught the awakening of this mystic truth, of the perception within our lives that we perceive the truth that is our life, looking back on the history of Buddhism, even through the Lotus Sutra, has taught the awakening of this mystic truth. Over time, people lost sight of its existence within their own lives. It was in that context that Tentai established the meditative practice for observing the mind based on the principles of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, and the mutually inclusive relationship of a single moment of life and all phenomena. He hereby sought to enable people to summon forth the world of Buddhahood. Tentai's meditation of observing the mind could be viewed as an appropriate practice that restored the correct practice of the Lotus Sutra. Did you guys all hear that? Had he not, without Tentai, Nichiren couldn't have come up with the stuff that he says so clearly, that he doesn't have to embellish and redefine, because it's already been defined by Tentai. Yeah. It's already been accepted by all kinds of other schools. You can't give me shit over that. 3,000 realms of single moment of life, because the Shingon's already stolen it, and so is the Flower Garland Sutra's already stolen it. Okay? So, you understand what I'm saying? All right. He hereby sought to enable all people. Where am I? Pardon me. I'll just continue with this sentence. It was in that context that Tentai established the meditative practice. The meditative practice, because it hadn't been named. The name of the words and the truth had not been revealed. Okay? That didn't happen until the true Buddha came along. All right. Tentai established the meditative practice for observing the mind based on the principles of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life and the mutually inclusive relationship of a single moment of life and all phenomena. He thereby sought to enable people to summon forth the world of Buddhahood. Tentai's meditation of observing the mind could be viewed as an appropriate practice that restored the correct path of the Lotus Sutra. Restored it, because it was not correct. He restored it to correctness. Further, in order to enable all people, by coming up with 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Further, in order to enable all people to perceive and actualize the mystic truth originally inherent in all living beings, Nichiren gave it the name Myoho Renge-kyo and established the practice of invoking that name, the practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. By doing so, he opened the way for all people to dedicate their lives to and live based on the mystic truth. Thus, Nichiren established the means by which all people can awaken to the truth of life and the universe within their own lives and actively manifest that truth. Moreover, this truth is the enlightened wisdom of all Buddhas and is revealed in the Lotus Sutra, which is the highest teaching of Buddhism. By basing ourselves on that truth, we can lead lives of supreme value. Nichiren Buddhism made this realm of truth accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime, no matter what his or her background. It would be no exaggeration to say that the practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in Nichiren Buddhism gave rise to a Buddhism of the people. This practice of chanting is indeed the supreme Buddhist practice, making it possible for us to fundamentally transform our lives.
Yes.
In other words, to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is to summon forth our own innate Buddhahood. All right? It is the direct path to manifesting the highest state of life. So when we attain Buddhahood from chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, where did it come from? Us. Okay? It didn't come from nobody else. It came from us. All right? In other words, to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is to summon forth our own innate Buddhahood. It is the direct path to manifesting the highest state of life. The wisdom and compassion of a Buddha that emerges through chanting enriches our life condition and brings happiness to ourselves and others. Further, as more and more people come to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo for the happiness of themselves and others, it will be possible to forge an alliance of people with the compassion of a Buddha and to ultimately transform the destiny of humankind. What did he qualify there for Kosen Rufu? That the Soka Gakkai going to take over the world? No, he said that like-minded people are going to forge an alliance. Okay? It's not as restrictive as that. Okay? It's like we will forge an alliance. Those that have come to the realization of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Page 17. Salute to the rise of the Buddhism of the sun, all right, which is the Soka philosophy, if you didn't know that. Another point we should bear in mind regarding the true meaning of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is that it is also the name of the Buddha of the latter day, Nichiren Daishonin. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the life of the original Buddha are indivisibly connected. We know that, right? You all know that, right? Other schools don't view life that way. So this is exclusive to us, okay? We could say that because we have a direct connection to Nichiren through the Buddhism of the sun, all right? We don't have to go through the high priest, and our only connection really exists because of the high priest. That's the difference between us and Nichiren Shoshu at this point, right? All right, so Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the life of the original Buddha are indivisibly connected. We could say that the fundamental truth of Myoho Renge-kyo that pervades life in the universe was only identified and established for the first time through Nichiren himself, practicing it and manifesting it in his behavior as an ordinary human being. He gave concrete expression to the law that people had not been able to perceive up to that point so that they could become Buddhas as ordinary human beings. Right? Nichiren's life as the Buddha of the latter day is a life dedicated to battling evil and vanquishing ignorance. The struggle to free people from all misfortune and misery in the world, from all negative karma and the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, ultimately entails battling the fundamental darkness or ignorance that gives rise to all evil and suffering. Before I flip the page, let me read that again. Nichiren's life as the Buddha of the latter day is a life dedicated to battling evil and vanquishing ignorance. Is there any difference between that life and the life you are to lead if you're a bodhisattva of the earth of the same mind as Nichiren? No. So just by living your normal little life, we don't have to, write sutras or anything like that. Just by manifesting our Buddhahood and sharing with others how we've done that, and having the ability to show the proof of actual fact that we're, what we're doing is correct. That's battling evil and vanquishing ignorance in itself. The struggle to free people from all misfortune and misery in the world, from all negative karma and the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, ultimately entails battling the fundamental darkness or ignorance that gives rise to all evil and suffering. How do you do that? He's saying that that's got to be done. That we got to battle that goddamn, devil of the sixth heaven. Fundamental darkness. How do we do that? We do that by attaining Buddhahood ourselves. Okay? Because we defeat the devil when we do that, and we're the only actual proof that that process is real.
Right.
Okay? That's what he's talking about. And gives rise to all suffering. That's how we get rid of all that. Okay? It's not some magic potion or a mystic, formula. As Nichiren indicates when he says that the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, he chants for the happiness of self and others toward the realization of Kosen Rufu, clears the clouds of ignorance. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo truly has the power to dispel life's darkness. When we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the sun of Buddhahood rises in our hearts. The ignorance and delusion, like heavy clouds shrouding the sun, are swept away. The sun of Buddhahood comes to shine within us. The darkness of ignorance vanishes. This is now, again, we're talking about the Buddhism of the sun, the practice that we bring forth from our lives every day as Soka members. But Nichiren Buddhism is not a teaching in which Nichiren alone shines like the sun. That's the whole point. It is a teaching in which all of us can bring the sun of Buddhahood to rise in our lives just as he did. We achieve the same Buddhahood as Nichiren. Yes. We are truly fortunate in that we can manifest the same brilliant life state of Buddhahood as Nichiren. I didn't say it. President Ikeda just said what I had already said several times. We are truly fortunate that we can manifest the same brilliant life state of Buddhahood as Nichiren. In this regard, Nichikan writes, when one embraces and has faith in this Gohonzon and chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, one's life immediately becomes the object of devotion of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. In a single moment. One's life becomes the object of devotion, which is what we've been trying to get to. We've been trying to get to the Gohonzon, the real Gohonzon in our lives, right? It becomes the life of Nichiren Daishonin. That's what I just was talking about, all right? Let me say that again. In this regard, Nichikan writes, when one embraces and has faith in this Gohonzon, like I do, and chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, like I do, one's life immediately becomes the object of devotion in 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. I become one with the Gohonzon. It becomes the life of Nichiren Daishonin. At that point, that's what my life is. You got it? All right? The practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the supreme path to attaining Buddhahood, through which each person can become a shining sun like Nichiren in his or her own right. The great 19th century Russian poet Alexander Pushkin sings, before the bright dawn, even so, shall flicker and die every sophistry jaded. At reason's imperishing spark, salute to the sunrise and vanish the dark. Nichiren Buddhism is the Buddhism of the sun that opens the path of life's supreme victory for all humankind. With the salute to the sunrise as our rallying cry, let us dynamically advance in the struggle to dispel the darkness and ignorance in people's hearts. Key points. Page 19. Uncovering people's inner potential. The point where Buddhism radically departs from many other philosophies and religions is that it uncovered within the individual's own life the law or limitless inner power for resolving all suffering on the most essential level. A Buddha is one who, based on this law, has attained the ultimate wisdom to fundamentally put an end to suffering and construct indestructible happiness. Buddhism is a teaching of unparalleled humanism that stresses the boundless potential within human beings. That's why it is called the internal way. From page 13. Mystic truth of life and the universe. The mystic truth of life and the universe. The cosmic life enfolds and pervades everything, and because it does so, it is also inherent in all things. The oneness of the cosmic life and our individual lives lies at the heart of the principle of the mutually inclusive relationship of a single moment of life and all phenomena. You and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are one. To awaken to this mystic truth is to attain the Buddha's unsurpassed enlightenment, because that's what it is. All right, continuing on the first column, page 19, the meaning of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. I somehow, this is my, I forgot one here. Pardon me. The meaning of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo enables each person to actualize a way of life based on the universal truth of Myoho Renge-kyo. The crucial point in chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in Nichiren Buddhism is not simply intoning the name of an external truth. It constitutes a practice to actually summon forth the inner truth that pervades the universe and our own lives, and live our lives in accord with that truth. This practice could be described as a process of establishing a self capable of activating and tapping from within the mystic truth originally inherent in all living beings. Bottom of page 19, first column. Establishing a Buddhism of the people. Nichiren established the means by which all people can awaken to the truth of life and the universe within their own lives and actively manifest that truth. Moreover, this truth is the enlightened wisdom of all Buddhas and is revealed in the Lotus Sutra, which is the highest teaching of Buddhism. By basing ourselves on that truth, we can lead lives of supreme value. Nichiren Buddhism made this realm of truth accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime, no matter what his or her background. It would be no exaggeration to say that the practice of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in Nichiren Buddhism gave rise to a Buddhism of the people. This practice of chanting is indeed the supreme Buddhist practice, making it possible for us to fundamentally transform our lives. Continuing, second column, page 19, the direct path to manifesting Buddhahood. To chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is to summon forth our own innate Buddhahood. It is the direct path to manifesting that highest state of life. The wisdom and compassion of a Buddha that emerges through chanting enriches our life condition and brings happiness to ourselves and others. Further, as more and more people come to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo for the happiness of themselves and others, it will be possible to forge an alliance of people filled with the compassion of a Buddha and to ultimately transform even the destiny of humankind. And lastly, causing the sun of Buddhahood to rise within. As Nichiren indicates when he says that the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo he chants for the happiness of self and others towards the realization of Kosen Rufu clears the clouds of ignorance, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo truly has the power to dispel life's darkness. When we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the sun of Buddhahood rises in our hearts. The ignorance and delusion, like heavy clouds shrouding the sun, are swept away. When the sun of Buddhahood comes to shine within us, the darkness of ignorance vanishes. But Nichiren Buddhism is not a teaching in which Nichiren alone shines like the sun. It is a teaching in which all of us can bring the sun of Buddhahood to rise in our lives just as he did. We are truly fortunate that we can manifest the same brilliant life state of Buddhahood as Nichiren. And that's the end of chapter 2, and it's like an hour, right? So I was going to try and do chapter 2 and chapter 3, but that would push us closer probably to 2 hours instead of an hour and 15 or 10 or something. So again, I will see you all in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
27th.
Okay, on the 6th.
27th.
Pardon me.
27th.
On the 27th, yeah. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.